I would request Pashu from SunEdison, which is, of course, a very prominent international developer, in terms of what you think, Pashu, can be done to improve the cost of the availability and the cost of financing for Indian renewable projects.
So if you look at, I think, oftentimes the availability and cost of capital is raised as an issue for such a large endeavor. If you think about, let's say 150 gigawatts of new renewables between solar and wind has to be added in the country in the last 7 years, which is the target that we have set for ourselves. We need approximately $150 billion. And just for ease of discussion, let me just say about 100 or $125 billion is debt, project level, some level of debt, and then the remaining is equity, where sponsors have to bring in money. On the debt markets, I think there is more liquidity now. Things have really changed in the last 5 years. If you talk to the bankers that are willing to put money, I think while there is a lot of stress in the power sector, and we heard from our friend from RBI yesterday that nearly 15% of all the stressed assets in the country come from the power sector. Notwithstanding that, we do see a lot of vibrant interest and more players entering the debt markets in renewables. Dramatic shift in the last few years. And if you just put things in perspective, I think just SBI alone probably underwrites about $20–25 billion of project level or infrastructure project level debt. So it is not insurmountable that in a 7-year period, you get $125 billion from the debt markets, right? This is not even, I'm only talking about domestic debt markets. Clearly, there are instruments that are being developed to reduce the cost of that capital. There is IDF, infrastructure debt funds, that are, the regulations are in place for beyond roads to expand it to power sector and renewables, which will happen. Several sponsors are developing bond offerings. Obviously, the bond market in India has not been very deep for anything which is less than AA or AAA rated bonds, but there are instruments like IIFCL and ADB and others are supporting. How does one give the necessary credit enhancement to offer a portfolio of projects into the bond markets? And those offerings are happening. And we think that all of that cumulatively should be able to reduce the cost of debt in today's environment to about, let's say, 10.5%, and longer tenors as well. So we believe that the market has shifted and there is liquidity within the Indian lending system, I think, for renewables from a debt perspective. If you look, and this is only utility, we'll come to, I think there are 2 other segments we should talk about it. And Vinay, feel free to stop me whenever you think I'm going over my time. I'm not watching my time today. On the equity side, and we'll talk about 3 segments, so this is just the utility segment. On the equity side, $40–50 billion is just really not a lot of money for both domestic sponsors as well as international. There is at least 20 institutions that have gone through their processes internally to get approvals on India as a story. You're talking about CPPIB's Canadian pension, ADIA, which is the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. ADIA has close to $1 trillion of capital. We're talking about institutions that have anywhere from $500 billion, $750 billion to $0.3–0.4 trillion, right? Temasek, GIC, and GIC recently expanded their interest within Greenco. So there is pools of capital. We're not talking about a few $1 billion. Pools of capital in $500 billion to $1 trillion range. Norwegian sovereign that have checked the box in India, have checked the box of infrastructure India, and are ready for renewable investments in India. They all will come with certain equity flavor, right? Well, I'm not even talking about the European strategics like EDF, GDF, NL, Fortum. There are many large European strategics that are all sitting on a pile of cash, and they have to go somewhere for growth. And India has become, in emerging markets, amazingly good destination. If you look at how INR has performed relative to Philippines or Brazil or South Africa, we've done very well, now including China as well. So, I think India has done phenomenally well with respect to its macroeconomics, current account deficit, and the currency has also held up a lot. Just the perturbation that has happened because of yuan depreciation. Otherwise, I think we've been very strong economy, and everybody sees that, and there is a lot of pool of capital available for renewables ready to be deployed in India, right? So I don't think equity is a big deal as well. I think there I would say that the regulations, SEBI and RBI have to figure out how to let every household in India participate and be an owner of a renewable energy power plant. Where do you get an asset which will survive for the next 25, 30 years? And you can be paying dividends every month, every quarter, or half-yearly or yearly, almost on a predictable way, because there is no fuel risk. Sun is here to stay, wind is here to stay, and you're going to get predictable cash flows. If you want more predictability, solar is probably better, right? So you can own a piece of a renewable power plant, every household in India, and the pension, we need to work with the pension regulator as well as the insurance regulator and have the LICs of the world and NPS of India participate in these long-term assets, because they have to match. If you think about a pension fund, NPS, they have to deliver pension to the retirees for the next 20 years, 30 years. How do they get income for the next 20, 30 years? SBI is not going to give you an instrument. Reserve Bank of India doesn't give you a 25-year instrument. Renewable energy projects can give you a reliable source of cash flows for the next 25 years so that they can match their liability and put large sums of money. So we think it is responsibility of the renewable segment working with RBI and the banking system to enable individuals, homeowners to participate, public to participate in funds like InvITs, Infrastructure Investment Trust, where they can get monthly payments for 25 years, right? So that is on the public side. On the equity side, that's what I would say, that there is capital. Now, all of this was for the utility segment, which gets much talked about. I think the biggest role solar has to play is in the rural electrification, or the 400 million people that don't get enough, are not connected to power, or 300 million people, and then if you say that they don't get more than 12 hours of power, it's probably 500 million or 600 million people. Solar combined with storage can solve the problem. We have implemented close to 150 grids in various states, where you set up a grid, and the beauty is this 500 million people, almost all of them have cell phone connections. How do they have cell phone connections? Because they have a cell tower in the vicinity which is able to deploy. Because of the architects of that policy somehow have figured out that because of universal service obligation, the telecom companies have to deliver telecom signal. But somehow the same policy has not been there in the electricity sector. As a result, you don't have it. And one can debate, maybe it's easier in the telecom sector because it's wireless, you can set up a tower and you cover a larger area, and the economics worked out. But the beauty is the telephone towers also need power. And 50,000 towers today run on diesel. Another 50,000 use predominantly diesel. So you have 100,000, 25% of India's towers somehow getting power and delivering a communication service to the same people that don't have electricity. So we just need to figure out, as private providers, if I'm given a license to be a distributed generation utility in that area, I will service my telecom operators who all use diesel. They spend today 25 to 30 rupees a kilowatt hour. I'll give it to them at 18, 19 rupees a kilowatt hour, because I'm going to set up also battery and some amount of diesel, because I need to give significant service level agreement. Once I've done that, and I'm a distribution utility there, and the DISCOM will recognize my position and give me a 25-year, 30-year concession, then I can start delivering power to the households in that region as well. And by just starting to displace their kerosene charges of $3 a month, right? We don't need to try to give a full service of 1,000, 2,000 rupees per month. Just take 150 rupees per month, displace one light, one charging point, because they have a cell phone they need to charge. That's how we start at the bottom of the pyramid. And you can graduate and maybe give an a la carte services where somebody can run several fans, several lights, television, everything for 500, 600, 700 rupees. We have done the economic modeling, and we believe that it will work without subsidies. We don't need any subsidies for this. And the numbers work out very well when you combine the telecom operators, because the project becomes bankable. The lending community is more than prepared to fund such projects. All we need is a regulatory environment to recognize us as a distributed utility. And I think I was talking to Mr. Gupta yesterday, and Maharashtra is coming up with a very innovative program of allowing for people to manage feeders, and this is in some sense a distributed utility that they are offering, and this is a pioneering effort, and I want to congratulate the government of Maharashtra for doing that. So this is the second segment, right, where I think capital will flow with just that one regulatory fix is our view, and private capital will come in. The last bit is actually solar water pumps for irrigation. We've talked about it, 22%, approximately, right? Quarter of India's electricity goes into this segment, never gets talked about it. $12 billion goes every year in running that operation, right?
which I think has an NPV of $150 billion. Why doesn't a $150 billion problem get discussed so much? This can be solved. We have done the economic modeling. It is very easy to solve this, not a problem. Obviously, you have to start pilots and get comfortable, make sure that there are no unintended consequences. And the farmers are happy because they want power and they want water during the daytime. Nobody wants to receive electricity in the middle of the night at midnight when the whole world is sleeping and the farmer goes to the farm and does his farming, because that's when the government is able to afford to give the free electricity. And they, as a result, we've been in thousands of households where the farmer has died because of snake bites, because that's when he's able to go and work. Nobody is happy. I don't think the farmers are happy, and there is at least, in our view, at least there is 5 million farmers throughout India, approximately, waiting for a pump connection, and the states can't afford to do that because
Pashu, sorry, I
it's
have to
already-
intervene you
So
there.
this is
Yeah.
another third segment where capital is available. Thank you.
No, that's very useful and very comprehensive as well.